Welcome to the Supply Chain Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Sheri Hinish, also called the Supply Chain Queen, and we have an action-packed episode for you today talking about energy intelligence, the new operating discipline for AI, sustainability, and enterprise growth with a friend and an incredible thought leader in the space, Dan. Dan, welcome.
Great. Thanks, Sheri. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to jump in with you on all of this exciting movement in the markets.
Amazing. So, Dan, why don't we kick off? And if you can tell people a little bit about yourself, your background, origin story, I think it would be really, really good to give them the right context for the conversation we're going to have together today.
Sure thing. So I'm a bit of a rare case in the corporate sustainability world. As I started my entire career and my education around the actual scientific realm of sustainability. So I got a 4-year degree in environmental science where I studied primarily aquatic ecology and the effects of operations of large organizations on watersheds in the New Hampshire area. So it was very scoped into the small bits of ecology and how that interacts with the world around. From there, I actually moved to Tennessee to work in the National Forest, the Cherokee National Forest, to do invasive species research as well as climate change research to understand how these giant carbon sinks that we have all over the U.S. are actually responding to climate change and responding to the influence of new species, invasive species, and work like that. The only issue with that was I was there for about a year, and I only ever worked in 1 4-square-mile plot of land. And when I asked my coworkers, hey, this has been fantastic, how do we expand the scope on this? When are we moving on to the next place? They essentially said, we're going to come back to this one area every year for the next 10 years, and then maybe we'll move on, right? That was our bit, right? And that was the time where I sort of thought, all right, I'm not using my skills at the scale. So I went back to Vermont, where I am originally from, and I pushed forward in the University of Vermont to join their Sustainable Innovation MBA, call it selling out, right? I went from science to corporate, all with the driving push of sustainability and climate change at the back. And ever since then, I've been working with IDC as a global market research firm, helming their sustainability strategy and services work, helping both providers and users of professional services understand how they can be more sustainable, provide better sustainable products, and push the market into new and cutting edge ways to continue the push towards a more sustainable world.
Yeah. And Dan, thank you for that context. And just for people who are meeting you or learning about you for the first time, I met Dan through the lens of sustainability research. So we're going to dive into that, but you have the credentials to actually have a truly holistic conversation. So I'm super excited.
Thank you. I mean, the holistic approach to sustainability is the only way that will work in the long term. And if we hyper-focus on certain aspects of it, we're going to miss out on 90% of the positive impact that we can have. So staying holistic, staying broad, I think is something that I very much pride myself on.
Absolutely. And so let's dive in. You mentioned that you live at this intersection of environmental science and then sustainable innovation. And so from your perspective, where are organizations really starting to connect sustainability to business value, to operations, and to real competitive momentum?
Sure thing. So there's really two big groups, two schools of thought in that. One traditionally is sort of the more obvious one is that, if you're more sustainable, if you treat your workers better, if you're able to provide your users with a better experience and a more sustainable product, they're going to pay more for it. And that has been an area of pushback for a number of years in the past. But as younger generations, Generation Z, myself as a millennial, right, as the buying power of these generations continues to grow, they are voting with their wallets. So being able to provide a transparent and truthful sustainability initiatives and sustainability transformations is going to be able to win you business, both from a brand value perspective, but also from a market capitalization perspective. I think we typically think about this as like a CPG strategy, but it works in other areas where buying sustainable products and services, A, is more attractive to the customers, but also they're sometimes a lot easier to produce, they're more efficient, and through the use and development of these new processes to develop these products and services, organizations are able to find big efficiency gains throughout their organization. And that's really the second part of this whole conversation linking to business value. Organizations create sustainable initiatives, they create sustainable transformations, maybe as a way to tick some reporting boxes. But in the long run, when we look at it, what are they actually doing? Well, they're driving efficiency gains. They're pushing their their partners to be more sustainable alongside them, thus compounding their efficiency gains. And their workforce is really buying in. Talent retention and talent attraction is a huge reason that organizations are driving sustainability. And by merging the two avenues of employee experience and sustainability on that social pillar of ESG, I think is a really big winner for a lot of organizations. I mean, you see it, I like to always shout out a local company up here that's close to my heart, Ben & Jerry's, some of the highest employee retention, some of the best PR that they're able to do just based off of what they're doing internally, right? They're not spinning up big marketing campaigns, just putting out a press release that says,
Their values.
hey, we're sticking to our values. Yeah, exactly. There it is. The purpose, mission, and values. And so really when we talk about linking to business value, it's those two big areas. There are some emerging things that are coming out that we're seeing in the research that sort of lends some credence to, less of a soft ROI and more of a hard ROI, right, on cost savings or efficiency gains that I spoke about earlier. And that's still in the early days as a lot of those processes are being developed and implemented as MVPs and betas. But I do totally expect that will skyrocket in the next 2 to 4 years as one of the big reasons organizations invest in sustainability.
I love the way that you've broken that down. Some of it you said soft ROI. Certainly you mentioned like reuse, repurposing, closed loops, and manufacturing. All the things that a lot of the listeners would be familiar with. What you said that you don't hear a lot is about talent and people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's incredibly insightful because especially in the age of AI, automation, and exponential tech, like it is also a race for talent.
It
And
most
you have
certainly
these
is.
unicorns, right? Every job is a sustainability job. Every job is a technology job. But these people who can sense make and navigate these domains, they're very rare. So tell me a little bit more about that in your perspective.
Sure thing. So I want to touch on that little thing you said first about automation, right? There is not an employee who works at a large organization right now that doesn't at least have some fear of being replaced by an AI chatbot or an agent or something, right? And when we start to talk about, what AI can do for sustainability, obviously there's a wellspring of potential that's there. However, right now, the companies that are really leading the race in this space, and I won't call out any names because I might get in trouble, but what they're doing is they're having champions internal to their organizations, right? These unicorns that you speak of that are subject matter experts that the company then pays to get trained up on the highly technical aspects. So these companies are essentially creating new roles for subject matter experts in sustainability that then are tasked with developing all of the fencing for using AI stuff that we think about as table stakes, but also helping develop the bots and the chat and the agents themselves. So now you have both the AI enabled subject matter expert, but you also have the AI agent that's able to do 20-30% of that person's job the way that they would do it. So it is still within the organization's purpose, mission, and values and driving towards the same goal, but it is able to do so autonomously with the help of that human in the loop, as people like to say.
Yeah, and it's a timely conversation. Why do you think AI workloads are forcing a lot of these enterprise leaders to really rethink energy and infrastructure and sustainability at the same time?
Yeah. Can I give you my cynical answer first and then give you the answer I hope
Go
is
ahead.
true?
Go ahead.
So the cynic in me wants to say it's all about cost, right? They don't care about the reasoning behind saving energy. They just care that it ends up as a lower number on their balance sheet. As the push behind you have to do it for the right reasons, I think is going to slow down this progression towards a more sustainable world in the long run. So looking at these big data centers, these AI workloads as a reason for sustainability purely because they are driving organizations to look at their energy consumption on a much more granular level, I think that's important. What I hope will come in the next 6 to 12 months as these huge mega data centers begin to be rolled out and built is that these organizations truly do begin to understand that now their physical footprint is so much bigger, right? And that understanding of when we used to think about sustainability, it was really nebulous, right? You can't really take that approach to a data center. So the internal champions that may not have been as vocal at these companies about sustainability now have a seat at the table in a lot of these instances because it's impossible to ignore the incredibly increased and material day-to-day impact that these data centers will have, not just on the bottom line of the organization from an energy use perspective or a carbon intensity perspective, but also, most importantly, and this isn't being talked about enough, on the communities that these data centers are being built in. There will not be enough in the grid to power that and all the homes and businesses that exist in that state. So we can get super granular on that and talk about grid resiliency and energy sourcing and what that means
energy
as
security, energy
energy
inequity. Like these are
inequity is a
communities
big
that
part.
are already hit first and worst. Technology
Mm-hmm.
companies are now energy companies, and there's a responsibility that carries. Also across the social license to operate in the communities where their technology is deployed and where these data centers live and are housed. And there's a lot of tension right now. And I don't have the
Yeah.
answer, and how do we sift through it,
Well,
Dan?
if I knew the answer to that, I would be making quite a bit more money. But what I can say is that these data centers going into these communities, the impact they're going to have is going to be tenfold what it was during the Industrial Revolution when we slapped down a coal mine in a community. I mean, yes, is it going to drive investment into that area? Sure. And if you're comfortable with closing your other hear no, see no evil thing, you can focus on that. This needs to be something that is handled on a national scale. Where we begin to understand what guidelines need to be put in place so that these data centers can go in, not just where they're wanted, but actually where they're needed. And a big push that I'm currently behind is that we have the technology to have SLMs, small local models, that are run locally on AI-enabled PCs. Right? It's stuff that you can do local that has a much smaller footprint. And I think that the availability of those, the understanding of their capabilities, and the willingness for organizations to realize, hey, we actually don't need 90,000 Claude licenses and ping a data center every time we want to analyze a graph. Being able to recognize that they don't need those and then pivot to local models, I think is going to be a big swing in this market. However, when you're going up against the likes of Anthropic and OpenAI, they've already cornered the market here. So unless they get on board with this as well, I think it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah. I just saw an announcement that they made around carbon offsets, carbon removal, which
Yep.
I thought was interesting. I wanna double click on the measurement gap
Yeah.
because that old adage, you can't manage what you don't measure. One of the biggest challenges that you've highlighted is actually companies who rely on a lot of the third-party cloud managed services. But what makes energy data so hard to see? And why do you think that matters for sustainability commitments?
So I think I would a little bit disagree with you on the fact that it's hard to see. I think that it's something we can look at and have a understanding of at a 50,000-foot view, but that's not good enough anymore, right? One of the big issues is grid availability. What is this one data center pulling from the grid, right? And so when we talk about that measurement gap, I think that's a big problem because if you could run a data center completely off of green energy, I would say it offsets 70% of the total societal impact of that thing. And being able to say that with confidence in an auditable and assured way is going to be key. When it comes to, the world as it is today, I think that it's just an immaturity of measurement protocols within organizations. There's still no real standardized way to go about measuring and calculating the carbon cost of a data center. The good news is there is a lot of effort going into that space now, both from the regulatory body standpoint with things like the ISSB and the EU Supply Chain Act. I couldn't remember the name. There's too many 4-letter acronyms.
Acronym soups.
Oh, alphabet soup, I call it. Yeah, but the progress is there. It's just happening slower than I think it needs to, and I think that has to do with a lot of red tape and but the lobbying power, at least in the U.S., that these giant AI companies have. And I think that pushing forward in that is going to require a lot of societal input, but also it's going to have to come from the vendors themselves, the suppliers themselves. So I'm cautiously optimistic that there's going to be a very granular way to look at this in the coming months. However, I think there's a lot of work that needs to go in the interim.
Absolutely. It's complex. The supply chain hasn't really caught up yet. There's lots of things that are happening around, like how do you actually make it real? When we
Okay.
talk about energy intelligence, who needs to be involved outside of IT, finance, procurement? Is sustainability, operations? How do you envision all of these functions working together? But then, more importantly, what type of accountability or checks and balance would have to be in place in your view?
Certainly. So that's a great two disparate groups needing to come together and have that technologies and processes that do not mesh and having to make them mesh is a big problem. When we talk about, who is in charge, right? Who is the final say? Where is this all rolling up to? I think it has to be a sustainability subject matter expert. So when we talk about the process that go into this, I think that this is a point where there could be a lot of divergence. Do organizations that are these large scale data center providers, do they put sustainability personas in the data center? Or do they have,
Mhm.
the IT and the software that enables a more further back view where they have their subject matter experts in house that are then ingesting and translating and putting all this data out to who needs to get it? If you're asking me really where I see this going and where I hope it goes, I really hope that are those sustainability subject matter experts in these data centers that are able to, on a very granular basis, be able to tune this hardware, tune
Mhm.
this software to best run these models the most efficiently that it can. When we go to the OT side, right, it's all the procurement and the embodied carbon within the assets that are being built. And I think there's already quite a good process for that. I know that there are a lot of organizations that are already looking at their embodied carbon. They're doing take back programs. They're doing a lot of, they're slowing down their tech refreshes. And I think that right
Mhm.
now that's pretty much where it needs to be. Where we need to make movement is in that communication between the two bodies, and then how this is reported out, both internally up the chain of command, but also externally as a part of, maybe it's a sustainability report, maybe it's marketing, who knows. But there needs to be more high touch from sustainability subject matter experts in that area so that the appropriate context can be applied. Because a data center that emits 1 billion metric tons of carbon and one that emits 1 million metric tons of carbon could be operating at very different capacities. So you can't do an apples to apples comparison just by that.
Right. Right, absolutely. And I think it also relates to some of the future of work and talent, like new skills that are needed. So we have a lightning round, and this is really
Okay.
fun. Okay, number one. What's the biggest misconception about AI and sustainability today?
That AI has very few practical uses for sustainability and is seen as a net negative for sustainability progress. It has massive potential to aid sustainability.
Wonderful. What's the one energy metric more enterprise leaders should understand?
Energy consumption per rack.
All right. What's the one question every company should ask its cloud or managed services provider?
How can you help me be more sustainable?
Oh, I love that. What is one place companies are underestimating hidden energy or carbon impacts?
Loss in their grid.
Yes, 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 yes. What skills should young professionals build if they want to work at the intersection of technology, sustainability, and operations?
Being able to diagnose sustainability issues at the heart instead of looking at them from a 1,000,000-foot view.
Oh, I love that. And last question, what gives you the most optimism about the next phase of sustainable digital transformation?
The fact that it is currently a CFO and CEO level issue.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Dan, where can folks find you? How can they learn more about you?
Yeah, Dan Versace on LinkedIn. I also publish quite a bit for IDC on this topic. So if you're ever on IDC.com, I'll be there. Also, personal plug for another podcast, United in Green. It's a soccer podcast I run for a carbon neutral soccer team here in Vermont. So it's at the great intersection of sustainability and the world's game. So happy if
It's
you
the
want to reach out
first,
and have a
right?
chat.
The first,
S-
is
Second,
that
we
the
have a
first
sister
carbon
club
neutral
in
soccer?
England. In England, that is carbon neutral. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, Dan, thank you so much. Everybody, make sure you go follow Dan, check him out. He's a great thought leader in this space. I love his perspective, and I think if you dive in, you'll love it too. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you.